air of judgment and pressure that I put on him to be what I needed him to be so I could be okay and, still appear to be the good girl that has transitioned now into the good wife and the good mother
Yeah. Oof.
and all of those things. This week on Tend to It, we're tending to a story that I mentioned in passing, my first marriage. To ground the conversation, I'm bringing in our producer, T, to help guide the journey. This isn't tea or blame, this is soil work. Together, we explore how early experiences with worthiness, shame, friendship, love, and heartbreak shape one of the most defining seasons of my life, and how I found my way back to myself through honesty, support, and healing. If you've ever felt unchosen, uprooted, or undone, this episode is a reminder that your soil can be restored and growth is still possible. Meet you in the garden. Welcome back, loves. Wherever you are, walking, driving, folding laundry, take a moment to land right here with us. Let's breathe together. Inhale and exhale. I'm Aiysha Walida, licensed therapist and storyteller, and this is Tend to It, a space where we remember that mental health, like a garden, needs tending. Because our emotional ups and downs as adults don't show up out of nowhere, they're shaped by the soil we were planted in, the wounds, the beliefs, the stories we carried long before adulthood. Today's episode is personal. In our very first episode, I briefly mentioned my first marriage. Yes, I've been married more than once, and today I want to tend to that part of my story with more depth. Some might expect some tea, but this is not that. This is soil work, honest, grounded, reflective, and because this story deserves thoughtful holding, I'm not tending to it alone today. I want to welcome someone who helps build the heart of this show, our producer, T, who will help guide through this conversation. So I'd like to welcome T.
Hey everyone, I am T, producer of Tend to It, founder of Black Unicorn Productions, and someone who believes that the real healing happens when we tell the truth about our stories. My background is in law, DEI, civil rights, but at my core, I am just someone who loves creating spaces where people can exhale, as Aiysha just did, and bring their authentic self. I'm so honored to walk through this conversation with you all today. And I want to thank Aiysha for being willing to tend to this piece of your story with us.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to jump on in. I'm going to start off. I'm going to ask you some questions. We'll go back and forth, you know, how we do. So let's start with the soil that you were planted in, as you mentioned in the intro. What was it like growing up in the church with parents who were elders and later pastors? How do you think that shaped your identity?
I think that there were expectations. I love church. I love my church family. And I feel like there were expectations around, how we were supposed to show up, what was pleasing to God. And I think some of the things and some of the messages I received from church may have been a little misconstrued in my mind because of some of the things that had happened to me prior, so it's like, in your child mind, you're mixing things up with some adult concepts and it might not come through as clearly as it could have. So I do think that there was a little bit of shame and guilt and things like that tied into some of the messages that I received. So growing up, I do think, with my parents being elders and pastors, there were expectations in the home. There were expectations in the church, and they weren't bad. We just needed to appear a certain way. So there were certain ways that you would show up.
I
So
got you.
in that, in wanting to be a good representative, not just of God, but of my family, of my church family, I definitely showed up as a good girl, a good girl. But I had a lot of self-esteem stuff going on. So very early, I had issues with the way that I looked and things like that. So that brought on a little bit of pressure for me to be seen, heard, and accepted. So I was a people pleaser real early. Look at me, I'm a good girl. I'm worthy of your love. I'm worthy of your attention, your
Yes,
friendship. And,
yes.
so there was that. And I took pride in being the good girl. So that's kind of what it was.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so much. I mean, like, I think our listeners and even I can relate to a lot of what you said growing up in the church too, with a grandfather who was a preacher. So these expectations and this idea that you had to be a good girl, and you talked about some of the self-esteem stuff. What were some of those messages that you took in about who you were or how you showed up in the world that contributed to the self-esteem stuff?
I think one of the things that stands out the most, oh, you're too dark. So, you're too dark. Then I had thick, beautiful hair.
Yeah.
And it's like, your hair is not straight enough. You didn't wear the most stylish clothes. People would say things like, oh, you have a really pretty smile. And you're cute for a dark skinned girl. And a lot of times I noticed my friends who were, in my mind, prettier, who were lighter, who had perms, whatever, they got more attention from boys than I did. So
Mm.
automatically I'm like, okay, well, maybe, I'm not this or I'm not that. So some of the messages were that, I'm not as pretty, I'm too dark, I'm not stylish enough, things like that. And they're common, just kind of teen and preteen type
Mm.
of insecurities that you have. Is a lot going on mentally and emotionally. It's like going on with your body. So there are some, we're looking externally for that approval, that verbal, that attention, something to let us know that we're okay. And I think in my mind, I didn't get that in a way that I felt like, other friends were getting it. So, I just didn't feel like enough.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. That's real, especially that dark light skin, because we have these standards of what beauty is, and especially as a teenager, like navigating that space. And you mentioned boys, and your quote unquote pretty friends or the lighter skinned folks getting some of the attention from boys. Um, did that ever happen with you? I mean, like you said, you were married, so we know it happened.
Eventually.
Eventually, it came. It
In my
came.
mind, it
So
took a minute, but eventually.
it swooped on through. It came through, and so when it did, what did that validation do for you? What did that external space do for you?
Listen, it came through. So as I'm going through, puberty and all this emotional stuff, my body is developing in a way that I'm not really checking because I'm looking at my face. I'm looking at, oh, I got these dark rings around my eyes. I'm trying to figure it out, trying to figure out how to wear makeup. And I wasn't really paying attention to how my body was developing. And, back in the late 80s or, early night, we were wearing baggy clothes and things like this. So I kind of, and it wasn't like, it's like early mid 80s or whatever. And I didn't notice. And then literally when I went to high school, it was like a light switch went on and guys started noticing me. And I'm like, "Eh, what?" And I'm coming home like, oh, they like me. So I start wearing the tight pants. My pants were tighter. And I'm like, oh, I have a little shape. I didn't realize that. So this was something that in a very quick way, a way that I wasn't prepared for, but I was loving it. I was still very
Mm.
insecure in a lot of ways. I was in this big school because I went from like a magnet school where it was the class sizes were much smaller and things like that to this huge high school that had thousands of kids. I think in my class alone, there were like 700 and some kids just in the ninth grade. So with that, I was very overwhelmed at all these things, but I noticed that boys started giving me attention, older guys and things like that. At first, it was kind of uncomfortable, but it started feeling good. So then comes in the I really, really want this attention. I really, really need this validation. At least this is what I'm thinking. And this is they must really like me. Let me. So there were things that were happening at the
Mm,
time that I was not ready for. I was confused by. I was being approached by guys that were younger than me. My first experience, I was like 14 and this guy was like 18. It was just, I was overwhelmed by
yeah.
the attention and the attraction that was happening. And I think that's when this whole get good girl and purity culture at church and who I was trying to become in school and this attention I was trying to get, it wasn't aligned. And that's when I
Mm,
began to feel shame and guilt around
mm,
how I was showing up in one aspect of my life and how I was showing up in another aspect, of my life. It was not congruent. And I felt bad. I felt like I wasn't pleasing to God. I felt like he couldn't. I'm like, he not gonna hear me. I'm just nasty
yeah.
out here. I'm
Yeah.
dirty. I'm this, I'm that. And all the people in the church thinking I'm such a good girl. I'm babysitting people's kids. I was just a really, and not, now let me just say this. It wasn't like I'm not a good person. I was a great person. I was a good
Absolutely.
little girl, but I had like this secret life because it was so important for me to be seen. It was so important for me to be heard, but not just, all around in this very physical and, attraction type way. I wanted to be liked by the opposite sex. That gave me this impression that I was okay. I needed that. So
Yeah.
that's when things started kind of getting a little fuzzier around guilt, shame, and condemnation. Conviction is one thing. It's like, yeah, you're wrong. You need to get back together. But it was more like, you're just. So there were these messages coming into that now, I'm a liar.
Mm,
I'm dirty. I'm nasty.
mm,
I'm this,
yeah.
and these things would come into my head and I would hear these things. So there was a separation between me and spirituality, I
Yeah.
think. Because I
Yeah.
thought God was displeased with me, so he wasn't talking to me. I thought we was beefing. I thought we was beefing. So I wasn't talking to him.
Yeah. No, so first of all, I appreciate you for sharing this. And as I'm listening to you talk, there's like this thread that I hear, right? Like this idea of being a good girl because you were born and raised in the church and the expectations on you because of that and wanting to show up in a certain way. And then this identity that if you did anything wrong, right? Because we're kids and we do things, but if you did anything wrong, especially in the physical world, then you were no longer pure. Or this idea of like purity is close to godliness, or
Mhm.
there's a disconnect. And so when you think about purity culture is real, and we're seeing a like resurgence of it across society. And when you think about that, like how did you navigate the guilt and the shame and this idea of not feeling clean or close to God?
I went back and forth. Like there were moments where I'd be like, you know what? I'm gonna cut it out. I'm gonna stop,
Mm,
having sex. I'm just
mm,
gonna be, who God has called me to be and be, so I had a strong desire to be pleasing to God. I had a strong desire to be pure, but something happened to me after the first time I had sex. I felt like, oh, you done messed up now. You can't get that back. You might as well
yeah.
just throw caution to the wind. You
Yeah. Yeah.
already. So
Yeah.
I low key wild out. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie. After the first time, I'm like, you done
Yeah.
already messed yourself all the way up. What they
Yeah.
say in Color Purple, she's spoiled. She's spoiled. She twice spoiled. And I was spoiled in my mind. And I was
Your
like,
mind.
I can't come back from this.
Yeah.
So I think I did have a time where I was just out there. I didn't really care about myself. I didn't care about, oh, you want it? Okay. You, okay, you act like you like me. I didn't care. I didn't
Yeah.
care about myself. I didn't care about my body because I felt so bad about the fact that I had given it away
Yeah.
in that way and I couldn't get it back. I had a very difficult time with that.
I feel like we got to do a whole conversation just on spirituality and how it like how we internalize certain things at a young age and without having the tools to be able to navigate that spiritual process. So we're gonna pin that because I feel like that's a whole other space as we talk about tending to it. But you just mentioned, opening this door and what you allowed and accepted. And so when you think about what you allowed and accepted, how do you see those early seeds shaping the relationships that you form later in life?
Mm. I think that one of the big things that came up the most was this idea that if I do everything right, so if you do everything right, if you repent, you turn from your wicked ways, and do not get me wrong, I believe these things. I do think my way of thinking about them kind of warped in some of the ways that it was taught to us. It kind of warped the way that I think about it, and it
Mm,
made it, the narrative and the stories that I was hearing, the way that I was receiving the information, just not fall too well.
yeah,
And I do believe if it wasn't so much guilt and shame wrapped up into what was happening to me, and I actually felt like I could talk to my parents about it, they would have broken down and I would have been in a much better position. But
yeah,
the isolation that came with this condemnation and all of those things put me in a position where I'm 14, 15, 16 years old winging it, right?
yeah,
Just out here. So I do want to say that. So basically I'm like, I'm nobody's really gonna like me, my buddy, da, 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 da. And I got a high school sweetheart and all of those things. And I was like, oh, okay. So, now I'm not all out here. It's just like one person. But I do think there was still this thing of I'm continuing to have to show and prove to people, not just that I'm worthy of you coming through, but I'm worthy of you staying. I need you
yeah,
to stay here. So there are certain parts of me that I was willing to sacrifice so people wouldn't leave
yeah,
because I, I'm still had this thing in me that I'm not good enough. I got this, I got this, in me. So I am fighting and trying to prove, whether it's to myself or to God, that I am worthy of, good things, of his love, of, just I'm worthy. So even in these relationships, it was a lot of stuff that I was showing in ways that I was showing up and things that I was doing. So fast forward to 19 years old, I pop up pregnant
woo,
and the church people like, Aisha.
good girl.
Not even the church. Everybody was like, wait, what? Yeah, yeah. She got pregnant by a random, and not to be rude to him because, he was a friend or whatever, but nobody was checking for him. They thinking it might have been my high school sweetheart, or somebody. No, it's just, you know. And it was cool. I liked them. We were friends, but it wasn't
Yeah,
like that. So it was a shock. So full transparency, the parents were not happy. I was in
yes,
my second year of college, first semester, second year of college, and I'm like, what in the world? And the jig was up.
yeah,
Everybody knew that good girl had some other stuff going on. So my two separate lives had collided. I spent a lot of time going back and forth with celibacy and waiting for marriage and jumping back into situations. So I was torn on this side. So I struggle with that and struggle with, again, with worthiness. My entire, it's as long as I can remember, to be
yeah,
honest. And then I got pregnant and I was so embarrassed and I was so ashamed. Um, and yeah, so This will probably be this was like when my whole world crashed down, and it's like it's almost like, everybody can see me now.
Yeah.
And I can't hide. I can't pretend.
Okay. Okay. So you just took us on a whole little story here. And so as we think about this idea that this mask is gone, that you can't hide anymore. Earlier, you talked about the feelings of being enough or not enough. Like, I can't even, I mean, I can't imagine because my sister had a child at 16. And again, we came from a very religious household. So I got to see what that was like. And so as you think about your story, like, how did you navigate the ideas of about being enough or not enough, especially given this like quote unquote fall from grace.
I didn't do well.
Yeah.
I I'm gonna be honest, like
Yeah. That's true.
I did not do well. I was very depressed.
Mm.
I was very anxious. Um, you know, once people found out who my child's father was, they looking at me like, "What?" So I mean, there was this thing of my friends, my core friends were even like, and I felt kind of rejected and kind of
Mm.
judged even by the people, my friends, my homies closest to me, like, that was dumb. Like, what do you? So I'm pregnant.
Mm.
And I felt even worse than
Mm.
I think I felt worse than I had ever felt. I'm like, I'm young. I just got to college basically. I did one full year. This is my first semester. My friends are going to move past me. Like, I'm going to be like all of these things. You
Yeah.
have ruined your life. That's what I say. Like you have ruined your life, and which was absolutely, it couldn't be furthest from the truth.
Yeah.
My baby
Yeah.
is an absolute blessing. He is 30
Yeah.
years old now, but my baby is an absolute blessing. But
Yeah.
at the time, I'm like, girl, you done messed up real, real bad. So what's interesting is during this time, and I think that it's important to talk about the seeds that were planted before I even got married. Before
Mm.
I even met my first husband, I was in other relationships and things like that. He was my friend. So just to put a pin in the jig being up, like at 19, and folks finding out, like, oh, okay, we're gonna we're gonna go back a little bit. And
Okay.
my first husband, we grew up in church together. So I met him, I was probably 12, 13, and he was probably around the same age. By the time we were 17, 16, 17 years old, probably 11th or 12th grade, we got really close. We knew of each other before then. We went to the same church.
Mm.
All the kids were pretty much close. But we became like tight. He would sit next to me in church every Sunday. He would clean out my purse. We would talk about, what was going on. We were tight. So, and it was just friendship.
Mm.
Fast forward, throughout my pregnancy, we go to the movies, and we would do stuff. He was always there. Then when I was 5 months pregnant, I got a boyfriend. I stayed in a relationship with him for 4 years. So we broke up when my son was about to be 4 years old. So I was with him for about 4 years, and me and my first husband, we were locked in. We were friends. He gone to the
Yeah.
military and all of these things, but
Mm.
we were always close. We always hung out. We always talked on the phone, things like that. We loved each other. That was my ace. That was my homie. So he came home from the military, and we started hanging out all the time. I mean, all the time. By now, I had broken up with the guy that I had dated for 4 years. My son, again, he was 3 going on 4 years old. Me and my first husband were locked in. We would go on car rides. We would go to the club together. We were just thick as thieves. So
Yeah.
we would go to the gym, all of that. Talk about who we were dating, laugh, stay up all night. So he tells me that he wanted to be more than friends. And I'm like, what? Okay. I wasn't date anybody at the time. And I'm like, we already know each other. We love each other.
Yeah,
The kid
yeah.
like them. Like it seemed like it makes sense. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is maybe this is what's supposed to happen. Like he been here all this time. And I didn't see it coming. Some people, weren't surprised. Some people were. I was one of the people who was surprised. Like, okay,
Mm.
things escalated very quickly after this. So we made things official. And I remember this because he wrote me a poem. But we made things official September 29th. And he wrote me a poem called September 29th. I wish I could find that poem now. He loved me down.
He
Like
did,
we was
yo.
you talk about some young sweet love. Oh my
Hey,
gosh. It
hey.
was just amazing. After we were like, oh, we friends and we want to take it to the next level. You couldn't tell us nothing. We were in love. So September 29th, we made it official. By December 15th, something mid-December, I was pregnant. By February, we was married. First of all, I was a baby. He was a baby. We had no idea what we were doing, but we had love, and you could not tell us that that wasn't enough. That's all we needed. I remember I was in premarital counseling, and they say, "What expectations do you have for a husband?" I said, "I just need him to take the trash out and put gas in my car."
If that
No
don't show
bull.
your age, yeah, that's real. That's real.
No bull.
These young
They
babies,
like,
yo.
oh, communication, money, talking about this real stuff. And we looking at each other like, we unbreakable. We are not tripping off nothing that y'all are saying. Because the way we love each other, ain't nothing coming in between that. Yeah, that stuff might have, not us. We good. Ciao. So, one of the things, speaking of, we talked about seeds that were planted and all of those good
Mm,
things. One of the things that I did not know that I was taking into this
mm,
relationship and this marriage, along with all of the love, all of the memories, all of the, good feelings, was the feeling of unworthiness, the feeling of not being enough, and all of those things. But what I thought was I could outsource my healing. I didn't know that I
mm,
needed to be healed from all of those things. I'm like, I got a man now. I'm redeemed. Like, oh, all of that stuff that I did back in the day, gone. I am married. I got a ring on it, washed it out. This relationship has made me whole. So anything that I ever felt, anything that I ever did, clean slate. She
mm,
good now. We good. I'm straight. I'm okay now because I'm in this marriage with him. He's
mm.
made it okay. So
Yeah.
I'm not this wretch undone. I'm not this dirty sleazy da 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 da. I felt like my being enough, me being whole, me being redeemed was tied up into him choosing me.
Mm,
Because he chose me, I'm good. I had no idea. One, the pressure, the emotional pressure that I was putting on him. And two, the disservice I was doing to myself for relying on another human to be all of that to me. So I'm going to take a sip.
take a sip because I am downloading all of this, especially this idea. Like you've painted a dope story, but this idea of like you said, outsourcing your healing.
Mhm.
That is strong as I can't curse. That is
Yes, you can.
powerful. I mean, I can. You're right. That is strong as shit. And that is powerful. Because all of the stuff that you're talking about being wanted and not wanting and now feeling chosen and it feels like redemption and like you put it all on him and then like this pressure in this relationship now. What were those pressures that were placed on the relationship because of this idea of outsourcing your healing to
Mhm.
someone else?
Mhm.
And the disservice you were doing to yourself.
Granted, I didn't know that that was happening at the time, and
Yeah.
neither did he. But it was like it immediately developed this codependency that I didn't
Mm,
have a name for at the time. So anytime he seemed unhappy or upset or not pleased, what's wrong? What is it? What's going on? Because if you're not okay, that means that I'm not okay. And if I'm not okay and we're not okay, that blows my whole we this need to work. We need to, because this you my redemption story, bro. Like we can't. So it was like anytime he seemed to have an attitude or what, he could not have independent feelings without me being on it. I probably asked that man what's wrong 50 trillion times throughout our entire relationship.
Yeah.
What's wrong? You okay? Da-da-da. Because I need you to be okay and pleased with me and all of these things in order for me to still feel like I was good. Because if you're not good, I'm not good. If I'm not good, we not good. If we not good, then I'm gonna be the nasty, dirty, unchosen, unpicked person again. I swear I didn't know this at the time. So now I'm mad at him. I'm disenchanted. You were supposed to be. You were supposed to be. I'm supposed to feel. This is supposed to look. You messing this up for us. So instead of me looking at myself and thinking, it might be some stuff that I need to work on. It might be some things that I came into this relationship with that I need to heal from. I was, mm-mm. And something always wrong with you. You always have an attitude. You da 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 da. You da 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 da. Granted, it was not always bad, but there
Mm.
was an undertone from me. Probably, I'm going to assume, because I know how I felt, of judgment, because I needed you to be okay. So I noticed there were certain things that you were doing that didn't make sense to me and didn't, connect with my narrative and what I thought things should be. And so we could look good and all those things, then I'm showing up differently. And that's pressure, on you. So I think that there was this air of judgment and pressure that I put on him, to be what I needed him to be so I could be okay and, still appear to be the good girl that has transitioned now into the good wife and the good mother
Yeah. Oof.
and all of those
Oof.
things. I was disenchanted. I thought
Yeah.
that it was supposed to be this fantasy thing. And when he showed up as a human and not as my superhuman superhero Captain Save-A-Ho, I was like,
Mm.
no, you got to do it right. You got to do it this way. You have to do, this is the way did it. And I need you to be who I need you to be. And so I can be who I need to be. The codependence was real and it was sad. And I had no idea it was happening.
Yeah. Yeah, the idea of the pressure and him being a superhero to kinda fix the wounds that you had. You talked about planting the soil or coming into the relationship with this soil beforehand and the expectation for him to kind of, heal those parts of you. And when that didn't happen, it sounds like, talking about the garden, like the emotional weather started to shift a little bit. How did those wounds of like not feeling healed again begin to surface? Or when did you notice that things were starting to fade?
We both were young and came in with our personal stuff.
Yeah.
He had this his stuff before, he came into the marriage, but I had my stuff. And we would talk about some of those things, but I don't think we realized how we were impacted individually and how we impacting each other, with not working on our things. I think things began to come to a head when I began, feeling unloved. Now, I'm not feeling loved. I know you love me, but I don't feel it. I know I love you, but I'm not really showing it. We've become roommates, basically. We're cohabitating, we're co-parenting. But when it came to anything, being a unit, that wasn't really there. We were literally going through the motions. In the last 3 years of our marriage, I was in graduate school. So that created more of a, distance, between, us. There was something that I had that I focused on. And yes, it was for the family, but I was checked out. That was my priority. And that's what, I focused in on. And that's what I did. There was, feelings of neglect on his end as far as how I wasn't showing up in different ways. Um, so that's when things really started crumbling the most, when I went started graduate school. And towards the end of that, I'll just say the relationship ended abruptly. One morning, it was a nice day. I will never forget this day. It was a Saturday morning, and I love natural light. And the sun was just coming in, and I was laying in the bed. I had finished my last assignment. I was done. All that was left was like comps and graduation, and I had just presented my last assignment the night before, the day before, whatever. And I'm like, you know what? Because I knew we were having problems. We weren't speaking. We weren't intimate
Mhm.
anymore. It was just, we got into that place. I said, we can really start working on this marriage now. I was like, school is done. We got these kids. We've been together for this long. We've been friends for this long. We can actually fix this. Let's go to counseling, do whatever we need to do. He was silent. And I was like, we could go like maybe silent.
Run it back. Run it back.
Right. Crickets. I'm like, some words were exchanged, some things were found out. No need to get all into it.
Yeah.
It was over. That
Mm.
morning, it was just like done. By that night, he was gone. And the next morning, he came back to gather his belongings. One morning, I'm trying to say, let's fight for our marriage. The next morning, we're gathering our things. So it was very quick. The turnaround was very, very, very fast for me. Um, and I couldn't grasp what was happening. Um, and I could not see what the future could look like. I was very, very, very afraid. And that night, when that everything happened, was when I had my first panic attack, and I thought I was having a heart attack. And I didn't call 911. I called my dad. It was in the middle of the night. I was like, Daddy, I think I'm having a heart attack. He was like, what's going on? He was asleep. I was like, my chest hurts so bad. I think I'm having a heart attack. My daddy said, girl, you got some ginger ale?
Black people in ginger ale.
Oh,
Shout
Dad, get
out.
some ginger ale. I think by the spirit he knew what was
Yeah.
going on, because I'd already talked to my mom, and all those things.
Mm.
So he said he started talking to me about it. And we started talking and talking. The more we talked, I cried, and he prayed, and I cried, and I started feeling better. I'm like, dang, the heart attack gone. That ginger ale worked. So, so that was kind of when my anxiety, when
Mm.
my first physical um representation of anxiety came through. And my first experience with an anxiety attack was that night. And things after that progressively, because it's something about not knowing what's next. I had 3 kids. I don't know what's about to happen. We haven't talked about the details, but you're gone. So it's like my brain was not able to catch up with what was happening. So there was like wires being crossed. The anxiety and depression was crazy. It was a lot. So I was moving, I would say, like, how would you describe it? You ever seen one of those Spike Lee movies when the characters are just
Yeah.
kind of sliding through? That's how I was gliding through. I
Mm.
didn't know what was going on. The basic needs were happening. So the things that got done were the things that I had to do. It's like, oh, you wake up, you take the kids to school, you go to work, you da all of those things. Otherwise, I couldn't really think too straight. And the kids were old enough to kind of get themselves together at that time. I think we said it was 15, 10, and 8, something like that.
Yeah.
Um, so, they were pretty self sufficient, but it was like bare minimum. People were kind of talking to me, trying to help me, figure it out and help me through it and all of those things. And things would come in one and go out the other. So it was the beginning of a very interesting time for me, because guess what's coming up? Them seeds. Oh, he threw you away because you wasn't enough. You didn't do this enough. You didn't do that enough. He gone. So what does that mean for everything is fine now because he chose you? Well, he didn't unchose you now. So what does this mean for you? I was feeling real thrown away. But the gag is I didn't even really want to be in the relationship anymore. That's the gag. I was done. You know what I mean? I think, even though I said, hey, let's do it because we already here. We already got let's try the best we can. Like we 10 years in. What else we about to do? You know what I mean? So let's just go ahead. But in my heart, I kind of knew that it's run its course or whatever the words are to describe it. But the idea of being unchosen, I don't know how else to call it. Then all of those things started coming back. All of those narratives. Oh, you're not this, you're not that, you're not da 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 da. And it came back 1,000, times worse. So now I'm sorting through that, along with the anxiety, the depression, the being unsure, the parenting children, the managing some of my friends' emotions. Because now listen, I can make something look good. You talk about a mask. I get people like, what? Y'all broke up. What you mean? No, y'all gonna get back together. I believe in y'all. It was like people loved us. They loved the idea of us and all of those things. We would host good old house parties, barbecues. We were. No, nobody really knew how unhappy we both were in the relationship. So they were shocked. So there was a kind of managing the idea of, how they were feeling about certain things and things like that, how people saw me and what they would think of me, what my kids would think, how they would manage through it all. So there was a lot happening at one time. But the biggest thing was all of these messages and the things that I was feeling on the inside. So I went through it. And I had to come to grips with the fact that there's some, seeds that were planted that have rooted around the seeds that you planted in your marriage, entangled all in those roots. And it's kind of eating things. It ate things up. It was just kind of eating at the root of our marriage, just having his seeds in there and just tangled all in there. And it choked it. It choked it to a point where it couldn't survive the stuff that not even I can only speak for myself, even though I know he brought some of his stuff too, but we're talking about me. There's stuff that, because I failed to work through, because I couldn't see it, didn't understand it, just didn't take the time to reflect with myself in a way that would give me the indication that I needed to work on those things, that completely impacted my marriage. So yeah, he did stuff, I did stuff, but there was stuff that I had in my backpack that I carried in and stumped the whole thing up. So that's what I had to sit with and take responsibility for. But it took a long time to get to that. Like I wowed. Like if you anybody know Solange's song Cranes in the Sky? She didn't try sleep it away, drink it away, travel it away, sex it away, eat it away, shop it away. You try to do all of these things to like push these feelings away. Man, I did all of the things. I do not want to feel this way. I do not know how or want to face it. So let's just numb it. Try everything. And one day I was in a fetal position on the couch crying. It was New Year's Day. And I was crying and crying. And my oldest son was there. The other kids were with their dad. So my oldest son was there. He was like, man, drop me off. His friend's name was Chicken. Drop me off at Chicken House. I ain't gonna sit here and watch you crying, balled up in this fetal position all day. I dropped him off to his friend and I came back. And as I was driving back, I was trying to think of ways that I could kill myself without my kids knowing that it was suicide. I was like,
Yeah.
all right, I could crash my car, or I'm
Mm.
thinking of all of these things that I could do because I did want them to know because I knew the statistics of how it's a higher possibility for your kids to, it's a higher
Yeah.
percentage of them,
Unalive.
yeah, unaliving themselves or dying by
Mm.
suicide if their parents,
Mm. Yeah.
die by suicide. And I'm like, oh, I'm not trying to leave that behind. So how can I do it and they not know it? I'm like, my friend called. You coming to New Year's brunch? I was like, nah, I'm not feeling too good. She was like, just get in the shower and come through. I was like, all right, I'll think about it. Cried and cried. I'm like, I don't even have the energy to unalive myself. So
Yes.
I was like, man, I gotta get in the car and I gotta literally
Yeah.
find a wall to run into. And I'm like, they're gonna know if I don't put on the brakes. Like I'm thinking all this stuff through. I get in the shower. In the shower is a place where my high power, my God meets me in the shower, y'all. So I'm in the shower and I just started crying and crying and wailing and wailing. Granted, this was a whole year after, it was almost a year. So this was January when we went our separate ways. It was in June of the previous year. So this was like January. So this is months after this happened. I just tried to do all my ways and figuring out things to deal with it on my own. And
Mm.
I had come to the end of myself.
Yeah. Ooh.
And I was undone. I was just bare. And I'm like, God, I just want to die. I do
Yeah.
not want to be here. I'm getting emotional. I do not want to be here. I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know what to do with these kids. And I say, I have no idea what to do. He said, you're exactly where I need you to be.
Mm.
This is exactly where I need you to be. You've been trying to figure this out in your own power, leaning to your own understanding, which wasn't much because my understanding was terrible. I was out here wilding, doing the most, trying to figure this out. He like, finally. So had my little talk with Jesus in the shower. And that's when things started changing. I went to
Mm.
the brunch. As soon as I walked in the door, her mama walked right into me and pulled me into a hug. I cried. And that's when I started going back to church. I fasted. So I started eating in a certain way that worked with, what was going on with me mentally and emotionally. I connected with my doctor and got on antidepressants.
Yes. Good for
And
you.
I was in counseling. And just with me, and I was exercising regularly.
Yeah.
The space, and we talked about this in every episode, the space that I was able to create for myself when I opened myself and laid myself bare and was like, I don't got it. It's like immediately in that moment, I was able to hear. And I was like, okay, these are the things that I needed to do. You need to be in a community, a spiritual community. Fine. You need to not, engage in drinking a lot of alcohol and all those things because that clouds your mind. Fine. Ain't nothing wrong with drinking. But at that time, I needed to chill because I needed to be clear. The
Yeah.
stuff you eating and you just need it. Fine. I
Yeah.
changed that. I lost 30 pounds. I was almost 40 pounds. I was active. I was, kind of showing up. And then I was able to take comps again. And I was able to, life started happening in a different way. I was able to show up for my kids differently and
Mm.
all of those things. But I was also able to address the things and the seeds that had been planted. When I was like 11, 12, 13 years old, I was able to do that. Not perfect, but
No.
that's kind of how I, you know, started to get my trajectory changed and I started to move in a way that I began to heal some things because
Hey, it's a journey.
it's a journey.
So first of all, you know we be here. I think you sharing your story is so powerful for a lot of reasons, but one of them, and one of the reasons, we talked about wanting to create this podcast was because representation matters, and having people talk about things like depression and talking about suicide and talking about going to counseling and talking about taking antidepressants and building the practices to help enrich your soil is so important for our audience and the people who tune in. So I appreciate you for like showing up and sharing that truly, because that's what the folks need to hear, you know. So thank you for sharing that. And you talked a lot about some of these practices that you started to help rebuild who you were. We're gonna take it away from you a little bit, and as you think about the folks who are listening to this podcast, what are some practices that are rich for soil rebuilding for folks who may be navigating something similar or going through emotional storms in their own gardens?
Mm-hmm. I think that routine is really important. Whatever that routine is that you create for yourself, especially in the morning, things that you can count on. I know that when I wake up, I do this, and then I do that, and then I do this. I think having a daily devotional was something that I had every day.
Yeah.
I would read a devotional every day. I would work out every day. I would pray every day. There were certain things that I did every day. So I do think that one of those things that really enriches your soil is to have practices that
Mm,
allow you to tend to yourself in a way that doesn't necessarily require a lot of thought work because it's in your routine. You can kind of like,
mm,
I don't have to think about it. I already know. I open a book to this page. It says, December the 9th. So I know I read December the 9th. I know
mm,
that, I do this regular 30-minute workout. This takes the thought work out. These are just things that I do, things that I can count on. So I do think that these things contribute to your soil. Also, having good people, wise counsel, not just your friends, elders, and literally I prayed a lot and asked God, send the people who I need to hear from and who I can hear from. Because sometimes, you can't hear from those regular voices. Like, they just saying it because they love you.
mm,
But when a random person is like, God told me to tell you XYZ, be like, what? Word? You know what I mean? And then it hits different. So I had those moments along the way too, where
mm,
people were just dropping things and I knew that they were messages that I needed to get because I was in alignment. And when you're in
mm,
alignment, oh, these things just started happening. And I think a part of that being in alignment is you're anticipating these things happening. So you're looking for it. I'm like, where it's at, where the messages at, where the homies at, where the
mm,
people going, you're kind of looking for it. So when people talk about manifestation, it's not some magical thing. I'm speaking these things that I need, want, and desire to be in my life and to be a part of my journey. So there is an inadvertent searching for that. So when that need, want, and desire matches with me looking for it, eventually we gonna run into each other. And I think that a part of that is something that happens, and that it also contributes to nurturing and feeding that soil that you need to just be okay, just to be grounded. And recognizing when the weeds come up, I am fortified. I'm not like,
mm,
oh my gosh, all is lost, because to this day, I am triggered by some of those messages, that came up when I was a little girl. That stuff didn't just go away. I mean, it's not, at the forefront, but certain things might happen. Certain interactions might go on, or I might be feeling a certain way. I'm super hormonal. Your girl just turned 50. So it's a lot going on as far as, hormones and things like that. So there could be some things that come up, but I know what it is because I did the work. And because I did the work, I can talk to it and say, I understand why you feel that way, Aiysha, and it makes sense. But this is not that. And we know that that is not your truth. Your truth is that you are loved, that you are desired, and you choose you. You are chosen. You were born chosen. You don't have to wait for nobody to choose you. You've been chose. I was waiting for you to choose you, and you have. So we're not so this idea of, oh, I might die alone and all, child, that might be here for a second, and then I'll be like, I'll be all right. I'll be okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm in a different space and place because I allowed myself the time to work through and work on healing from it. And again, when it comes up, because it does come up, I know what to tell it. And I'm confident in what I tell it because I've done the work. But I also extend myself grace when it comes up. It's not like, well,
Mm,
I ain't over that. Why I'm still thinking like that all these years back? No, Aisha, I understand why it came up. And it's okay.
mm,
We know that
mm.
that's not true, girlfriend. You're good.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you pull them old weeds. Now you got it. You got that soil. I love this. Let me again. Thank you. Thank you for switching roles too, and allowing me to ask you questions, and for sharing your story. The emotional weather is real. It's literally winter time, and so I know folks are dealing with all kind of things, and so I appreciate you for sharing and letting me onto your space. Um, Thank you. All right. I'm going to take your two signature questions and I'm going to ask you your questions. So, the first one is if you could plant one seed of wisdom for someone navigating the emotional weathers of life, whether that's heartbreak, identity shifts, whatever it is, what would it be?
I can't think of just one little seed because, and I'm the host, I can kind of, do that, take some
Okay,
liberties.
host.
I'll take some
Okay,
liberties.
take your liberties.
So, one of the things that I would say is go back to your foundation. Think about those things, those places, those people where you felt safest, where you felt the most seen and the most heard, and go there. That can be a spiritual place, it could be a natural place, it could be a friend, wherever. It could be the library. Go to that place. These places and these spaces create an environment of change. It creates an environment of being able to hear if you're in a space where you feel safe. So it's like a foundational thing. Go back almost to the root, to where you felt safe and secure, seen and heard. I think the other thing that I would offer, as far as a seed, is to always find ways to pour into yourself. So even if it is affirmations, even if it is just how you are eating, how you're drinking, how you are moving your body, these are ways of loving yourself that people kind of take for granted. And when you take care of yourself in that way, you feel a little better because it's really like nurturing and extending. You don't, you're valuing yourself in a way that I think helps for you to keep your feet on the ground. So I do think like taking care of yourself, whatever that looks like for you, and also being honest. Be honest with yourself and with someone that you trust. It could be a doctor, it could be a therapist, it could be a parent, it could be a friend, it could be a stranger. Be honest with yourself because that's the only way that you're going to be able to get through what you're experiencing. If you're able to leave yourself bare and be completely honest with yourself, and that can be very, very difficult, but I promise you it's worth it.
I love them. You did three, but hey, host liberties around here. We love it. Truly, truly. I'm gonna take that first one to heart and go back to the foundation. So I appreciate you. The last question is, what song keeps you rooted, especially during seasons where the growth may be happening underground or you're in a rebuilding phase?
Um, Again, it's a couple of songs, but one of the songs that stands out the most and that helped me through even that time, and now is Kirk Franklin, "Brighter Day." When I
Hey.
say that thing will have me bawling in the car, singing to the top of my lungs, and just the hook. I never knew I could be so happy. Happy. I never knew I'd be so secure. Because of your love, life has brand new meaning. It's going to be a brighter day, brighter day. Um, and also, one of the things that I do when I'm listening to love songs, especially during that time after my separation and eventual divorce, I would hear love songs and I would sing them to myself. So instead of me feeling like, oh, I don't have nobody, literally, I began at that time singing love songs to myself. So any love song I would listen to, it would be me singing to me. And that began a different kind of relationship and way that I saw myself, even through my hurt and my pain, in a way that I began to love myself a little differently. So yeah, Brighter Day, Kirk Franklin is my jam.
Hey, you just took me back to youth choir with that one, yo. I was about to bust out the alto voice, but I figured your folks weren't ready for it, so I'm gonna leave it. But
Okay,
I
you do
feel you
also.
on the brighter day. Well, again, thank you for letting me host you, and I'm gonna toss it back over to you.
Thank you so much, T, for guiding me through this very personal episode today. That was not easy. I was not expecting to cry, but I'm not surprised I did. And I bought tissue just in case. But I appreciate you and thank you for helping me to get through that. I think it's a very necessary topic, and I'm glad that we've created space for my story to be heard and hopefully someone, to benefit from it and begin their healing process. So thank you. As we close out this conversation, it's time for our tend to it practice, the part of the show where we move from listening to tending. This week, I want you to track your emotional weather. Not to fix it or anything like that, but what do you notice? Is it foggy? Is it cloudy? Is it sunny? What is it that you're noticing about how you're feeling? So the awareness is the first step to tending to your soil. So we just want to pay attention. We just want to be aware and taking that first step in tending. So what are you feeling? Thank you, T, for guiding this conversation. Next week, we're moving to episode 6, Tangle Roots. We're exploring family, inheritance, identity, and the beauty and burden of our lineages. We're going to close, as always, with our breath. Inhale and exhale. Remember, storms pass, soil restores itself, and your growth is worth the care you give. So be it, tend to it. This podcast reflects my personal reflections and professional insights as a licensed therapist, but it is not a substitute for therapy. The conversations and practices shared here are for educational and inspirational purposes only. If you are seeking mental health support, I encourage you to connect with a licensed therapist in your area who can provide individualized care. Tend to It is a production of Black Unicorn Productions. This episode was executive produced by Tanisha Williams. Special thanks to you, our community, for showing up and tending to it with us. Until next time, remember, the soil is rich, the seasons will change, and your growth is worth the care that you give. So be it, tend to it.